Hello everyone, welcome to part 1 tutorial of making this petticoat. Just doing a quick show of what we will be making. As I say, this is part 1. The tutorials will be in 2 parts because the videos will be too long to put into one file. So just having a quick look at the petticoat, which I'll show you in a moment through this video how it's going to be made. Apologies, halfway through the video when we're making the waistband, when we're actually showing one of the parts about how you turn the waistband inside out when we've sewn it, something has gone wrong with the video quality and the sound. I don't know what's happened, but apologies for that, but you can still more or less see what is going on. So again, do apologise for that. I don't know what's gone wrong, but it's pretty self-explanatory anyway from just watching what we're doing. Okay, so enjoy part 1, and then part 2 obviously be the same title, but it'll be titled part 2. Right, moving on to my petticoat now. This is me preparing the patterns. What I did is I used a half circle skirt pattern from my Disney Aurora Sleeping Beauty dress. I extended it by 10 centimetres because we've done a trial over the cage, and it needs to be 110 long at the front, and the back seam needs to be 120 centimetres long. And I just want it to clear the floor as well. I don't want this to touch the floor, so those are the basic measurements we got. I've cut out, you can see on top here, follow my finger, that's the front, so that's my waist there. I then laid out some more paper and I put some extension pieces on because the paper wasn't wide enough, so that's what all that is there, and all that tape. And obviously the waist has to stay the same. But this one, the back seam at the very centre where I've got that red line, that has got to be 10 centimetres longer at the back. Obviously it's going over the bum bag as well, so it gives it a bit extra lift at the back, so you need a bit more length. So what I've done is I've laid this on, and where the side seam is, because this is your side seam, remember, I've put a red mark there and a red mark there where that finishes on the paper underneath. So, like we did the cage earlier, I've now got to make that extra 10 centimetres at the back curve round to actually finish at that red mark there. So we're going to do the same principle. I'll just remove the top piece so it makes it easier. Okay, so still working on the back here. This is the back section. I folded it in half. So I've got half a circle skirt out here. I've got my extension pieces down there, but you can just ignore them for now. I've got the marks here that I was telling you about earlier. So what I'm going to do next, because I need to make that mark curve down and end up and perfectly at the bottom of that mark over there, I'm going to measure from the edge here all the way down to where that mark was on the centre seam. So that was 1 metre 10.5. So then we're going to then do more or less the same here, marking down the centre. So measure from the top to the bottom, I get about 1 metre 19 centimetres. The next thing we need to do is some measurements. So you take the longest one, that's the longest seam on the back, and mine was 119 centimetres, and then you take the shorter one, 10.5, and you minus that 1 metre 10.5 from 119, and I get 8.5. I then divide that by 2 and you get 4.25 centimetres. Okay, we now need to get a halfway point across this skirt that I said, remember, is folded in half. So putting the tape measure here and measuring right to the end, and how much do I get?
176.
Measures 176 centimetres, so I'll just... Okay, so halfway between that 1 metre 76, I'm going to put a mark halfway. Okay, next we're going to measure from the centre of this curve all the way down to that measurement we got, that final measurement we got earlier, 114.75, from there to there. So we've measured that measurement, and we've put a mark at the very bottom of the tape measure. So that's roughly halfway along. Okay, next we're going to measure from the corner here to where we've just put that mark, and we get 89 centimetres. Okay, so we take that 89 centimetres, divide it by 2, and we get 44.5 centimetres. So we've put a mark there for that halfway point at the bottom. Okay, so take that 4.25 that we had earlier at this point when we took that measurement away from that and got that, and then divided it by 2. Then you divide that 4.25 by 2 and we get 2.125. Okay, so next you take that 114.5 that you had earlier when you were doing this centre to start with, and you add that measurement you got over here, 2.125, and we get 116.65 centimetres. So we now put the tape measure between the halfway point on here and the edge, so quarter way in, measure all the way down to that mark we did earlier, and measure that measurement we just got on here of 116.65, or as close as possible, and put a mark either side, so that will be where we'll be cutting later. Okay, so next we're going to work on the other side of the half. We're going to measure from the corner where I did that red line, where the side seam is, to that centre marks I did earlier, and we get about 89 centimetres. So we're just going to go halfway between 89, which is about 44.5, put a mark. Okay, next we go back to that halfway point measurement here of 114.75, and we minus the 2.125, and we get 112.37, so 1 metre 12.37 centimetres. Right, so then we get the quarter way again between there and there where my fingers are, and we measure right through to that mark we made, and we measure that distance of 112.37 and put some marks either side. We're now going to fill in the remaining parts and just do this by eye, from our marks here and there. I think that roughly comes to about where Mum's finger is there, roughly. And then we need to go from there, and it's got to finish up here, so just doing that by eye. Yeah, that looks about right, yeah. About there, so we've done that all the way along, just filled in the rest by eye. Okay, so now I've cut along those red lines, And now you can jump up and down for joy and put yourself in a dark cupboard if you feel like it after that, because I certainly do. Okay, so we've done that bit. We've now got our measurements, got my back piece sorted, so I should be all good to go. And I'm just going to do a test run to make sure it all works out with some scrap cotton, and I'll be back later. After doing this mock-up, this practice run for the petticoat for the full circle skirt, we found that there was just too much in the full circle skirt, so we're going to cut the side seams down a bit, obviously leaving the waist measurement as it is and taking some of the excess out of the rest of it. So what we've worked out is we actually need to lose, measuring from there to there, we can see I've started cutting, is about 40 centimetres off. So that's 40 centimetres to come off each side. So putting the tape measure from the top edge there and having somebody hold the other end down for you to meet up with that mark. I've drawn a line with some pen, and now I'm just cutting up that line to meet back up with the waist. So that should take some of the excess out of it. That was just a little bit too much for what I needed. Then to make it accurate, when I cut this, I will then just fold it in half and cut the same amount off the other side of it. Okay, so I've now taken 40 centimetres off each side on both pieces. I've got the back laid down here, the one on top is the front, the shorter one. And just making sure now that the side seams are level, because obviously you've taken some off. I've got here about 2 centimetres overlap, so I'm going to have to correct this and just bring it in to meet that side seam there, and the same on the other side. So it just means sort of blending it in a bit, curving it in. Which isn't too much of a problem. So I wasn't going to film this, but I thought I would, because you'll probably be confused if I lay some pattern pieces out later and they're no longer a full circle skirt anymore. You're going to think, hang on, what's gone wrong? You had a full circle skirt and now you're cutting it down to 3/4 skirt. So I thought better to put this in to show you what I've done along the way, and that things, you know, even when we do a practice run, it's not quite what I had in mind, so we then have the chance to make a change. Okay, so I'll just cut that to match that seam and it should be good. That I've taken some more. Okay, so after altering all those pattern pieces and turning it into a 3/4 skirt instead of a full circle skirt, I've now gone ahead, I took all my mock-up apart and then put it all back together, put the waistband back on, so I've cut the pieces to the new dimensions, and I've been on the table and Mum, tearing her hair out, has levelled it off as best she can round the bottom. And I will say, actually taking that excess out of the fabric, so it's not so much of it, has actually helped not only with the weight, but it's also takes some of it out of it as well, so it doesn't look quite so full. So this is my mock-up finished at this point for the petticoat. I'm then going to go on to getting some measurements for my ruffles and how many ruffles I want, because there'll be lace on this. Right, okay, so I'm making a start on the petticoat, and from a market in Birmingham city centre on the rag market, so I've got this gorgeous slightly heavyweight cotton. It's got a bit of a sheen to it. I'm not quite sure if the camera will pick that up, but it is cotton. It's got this lovely sheen to it. It's not a cotton lawn because that's quite thin. This is quite thick. But yeah, it's a lovely ivory cream colour, and I decided to pick this, so I'm just going to go ahead and start cutting up my pieces, starting with the back piece here. Right, here I've cut out one back section. You can see that I've cut a little bit further out than the pattern piece. That's because I want to overlock this edge, and I've done the same on the bottom as well. I've cut just a bit further than I needed to, so I'll put overlocking, so a little bit will be chopped off when it comes to neatening the edge off. Okay, as you see here, I've got the front section which is on the fold and the two side sections here, and the first thing I want to do is overlock the side seams and then sew them together. I might I think I'm going to overlock the top while I'm at it as well, so where the waist is I'll neaten that off as well. Just makes everything nice and tidy and a bit stronger. Okay, so what I've done now is I've overlocked the edge. I've done that on both sides. I've decided to leave the top because it's going into a waistband, so it should be okay. So all the edges, side seams on every piece have now been overlocked and neatened off. This just helps make your garment that little bit stronger and last a little bit longer. Okay, so I've now gone ahead and sewn up my side seams on both sides, that side and that side, so they're sewn together. I've also sewn down the back as well. This is the back seam here, and obviously remembering that you need an opening to get in and out of it. I've left a 20cm gap, so I started sewing 20cm down from the top to right to the bottom hem. It might be different for you, but as I've done a lot of these skirts, I already know roughly how long the opening has got to be. Before I sew my waistband on, I'm just giving these seams a press open, just so it's a bit flatter, and just helps me personally when you try to put the waistband on. It just means then that they won't keep moving or folding back on themselves like this. So I'm just going to press them open with the iron and do that on all three seams.